Sorry. Thank you. My name is Dylan Gatis, and I'll be moderating the panel. So thank you for coming to the Careers in Public Service and Politics panel at 11 here in Franklin. I'm just going to read the bios of our four panelists here real quickly. So Mr. Dale Giovengo is a foreign service specialist who has held or managed numerous positions responsible for embassy operations in France, Albania, Kuwait, Pakistan, Switzerland, and Iraq. As a human resource officer, financial management officer, and contract officer representative, his experience has provided him with the knowledge of what it takes to make an embassy work from day to day. The Foreign Service is a second career for Dale. Before joining the department, he has had a successful 36-year career in the private sector in the retail industry. He began his career with Giant Eagle, headquartered in Pittsburgh in 1970 as a store clerk, spent 10 years as a store manager, and 22 years as a human resource director. He also spent 20 years as a professional soccer coach, coaching in professional leagues, and at the high school level in the Pittsburgh area. Dale has tried to bring much of his private sector experience to government. He was born and raised in Pittsburgh and holds a BA in sociology from the University of Pittsburgh and an MA from Duquesne University in leadership and ethics. Dale and his family live in Western Pennsylvania. The Honorable Judge Todd Kaufman was born and raised in Charleston. He was educated in the public schools of Kanawha County and attended preparatory education at George School in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He graduated cum laude from Tufts University in 1975 with a double major in English and political science. He worked as a paralegal in Washington, D.C. law firm of Covington and Burling, and received a law degree from West Virginia University College of Law in 1980. He served as a clerkship on the United States Tax Court during law school before joining his late father's Charleston law firm of Kaufman and Ratcliffe in 1980. While in the private practice of law, then-Governor John D. Rockefeller IV appointed him to the West Virginia State Senate in 1982, and he was elected in 1984. After his legislative term ended, he was elected to the bench in the 13th Judicial Court, Kanawha County, in 1988, and re-elected in 1992, 2000, and 2008, serving as the Chief Judge of West Virginia's largest circuit 4 times. Judge Kaufman has lectured by invitation at an international law conference in Croatia. His speech in Croatia on class actions in America was published internationally, on constitutional law as a judicial scholar at Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia, at Trinity College Law School in Dublin, Ireland, and at Harvard College on the judicial process in America, where he was introduced by historical and West Virginia native Harry Louis Gates Jr. Judge Kaufman is a former member of the Mass Litigation Panel of the West Virginia Supreme Court and past president and executive officer of the West Virginia Judicial Association. He is married to artist Barry Kaufman, and they have 3 grown children. Mr. P.J. LaBelle manages Malady and Wooten's Pittsburgh office and anchors the firm's presence in Western Pennsylvania. Mr. LaBelle has a strong record of experience representing a wide range of clients for both state and local governments, with a focus on economic development, energy, transportation, and utility-related issues. Prior to joining the firm, PJ served as a senior policy advisor to House Democratic leadership in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. As a key negotiator for House Democrats, he played a lead role in the passage of laws that have changed the face of Pennsylvania, such as Governor Rendell's Energy Independent Strategy and the Rebuilding PA Infrastructure Investment Package. Preceding his years of service to the House, Mr. LaBelle served on the staff of former Pittsburgh City Councilman, now Mayor William Buda. P.J. LaBelle is a native Pennsylvanian, born and raised in Kanawha County. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Pittsburgh and resides in the South Hills of Pittsburgh with his family. Mr. Dustin Siggins is the founder of Proven Media Solutions, a Virginia-based media firm and branding firm. A former journalist, Dustin began helping clients in 2013 to accomplish their media and branding goals. His clients and employers have been placed in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Associated Press, and many other targeted outlets. One company saw a 600% increase in media placements within 1 year, including national, state, and industry outlets, from regional network televisions to statewide NPR. Dustin's expertise includes creating excellent content on tight timelines, helping clients accomplish their media exposure goals, and connecting clients to influencers in their industry. So thank you to our panel for coming today. To start off, I just would like to ask what a typical day for each of you would look like. If you want to start, Mr. Kaufman.
I'm a general jurisdiction judge, and as a general jurisdiction judge, we see all walks of life that come into court to try to get their problems resolved. Poor people, rich people, diversity in color and experiences in life, and geographical diversity as well. So any type of problem that people have, we see walking through court, and that also includes criminal cases, child abuse cases, and juvenile delinquencies.
So a typical day in the foreign service, much depends on your job and where you happen to be posted at the time. I'm classified as a human resource officer, so my job in the State Department is much like it was when I worked in the private sector as far as human resources is concerned, hiring, training, discipline, technical kind of things. But other people in the State Department, and again, depending on where you are, have vastly different jobs. We have political officers that serve in embassies overseas that work 9 in the morning till midnight, interacting and interfacing with local governance, in what they're doing and trying to gather information. We have intelligence officers that work from midnight to 9 a.m. Out trying to gather information. So there's quite a few different jobs in the State Department, and we're at over 280 cities or posts overseas. So each job varies a little bit, depending particularly on the security situation.
So one of the advantages of technology is I work from home. So my typical day involves getting as much sleep as possible because we have a 10-week-old baby at home. And so, but in terms of my actual job, running a media firm, you deal with clients from all walks of life. It's sort of like the judge said, except that I'm not trying to pass judgment on them. What I'm doing is trying to help them get published, helping them with communication strategy, social media strategy. Worked with 3 or 4 religious clients just since the summer. 3 or 4 religious clients, 3 for-profit clients, including a startup in Austria, and I've worked with several nonprofits that are trying to engage in 501c3, 501c4 political activism. And so you see a large diversity in people's goals and industries they want to be in, industries they want to target, because they may have fundraising goals, they may have exposure goals, they may have policy goals, which PJ is going to speak more on policy probably than I am. And so it really offers a lot of diversity, which is really good because I've never been qualified with ADD, but I'm sure I have it somewhere. And so it allows me to really have a lot of fun while still being able to serve a wide diversity of people. And for those who are interested in political journalism, which I'll address later, I'll be able to use those 5 years there and really help my clients in their needs.
My name is PJ Lavelle. I work for a government lobbying firm based in Harrisburg, and we also have offices here in Pittsburgh downtown. And so our firm is a bipartisan firm made up of, we have half of our lobbyists are Democrats, half are Republicans. The day really differs depending on various things. So we do a lot of work when the General Assembly is in session in Harrisburg, and during those times we are basically a communicator between the private sector or nonprofit clients that we have and the government. So we spend a lot of time understanding our clients' needs, what they're working towards, and then communicating that the best way we can to the elected officials and the decision makers in the state capitol and in local government.
Thank you. So we'll continue to just go down the row. It's easier, and you can all comment on each other's comments as well, obviously. And if there's ever a question that you would like to just address, just let me know. But so what was your career path like, and do you have any tips for some of the undergraduate students that might be here? Judge Coffey.
My career path was probably like most judges in America, and that is that I went to college and law school. That's about the short answer to it. The only 2 ways to get to be a judge in America is to be appointed or to be elected. I was elected, and so I had to run for office, and I can enlarge upon that if somebody under the heading of politics today, where it says, a career in politics, running for office or being in office is of interest to you. But But that's the career path of a judge.
My career path is probably typical Pittsburgh, actually. As Dylan said in the introduction, I worked for Giant Eagle for 36 years. I hope you all know Giant Eagle. Yes. Hope you all have Advantage cards. You don't have to reach for yours right now. Does anybody here work for Giant Eagle? You do?
You can't be on the jury.
And which store?
Right across the street, store 68.
Oh, that was the old Fred Roman team. Used to own it, I don't know if he still does. Anyway, okay, so my career path, 5 days after I turned 16, my mother said, you have a job Monday at 5 o'clock, the local Giant Eagle show, which I did. And I started as a produce clerk and thought I'd get a real job once I got out of high school. And I was able to continue to work at Giant Eagle through college, and I thought I'd get a real job once I got out of college. But at the time, I was making more money as a clerk at Giant Eagle than I was able to with my degree in sociology at the time. So I continued to work there, and the next thing I knew, I was 27 and had 3 kids, and figured I had better make the best of this. And I then applied myself to career advancement at Giant Eagle. So I became a store manager, and then I became the human resources director for 22 years, which is a pretty influential position in a for-profit company. So I had responsibility for 35,000 employees in a company with $9 billion in sales. So my career path was much determined, not so much by my mother, but I guess it was, but by family circumstances. But even at that, I always kind of had in the back of my mind from just interest that I would like to pursue a career in international relations. So when I was able to, I took the Foreign Service Officer test, and this was further motivated after 9/11 to do that. So I took the Foreign Service Officer test and passed it, and was offered a job as a Foreign Service Officer and as a Human Resource Officer, and took it. But my career path is a little bit skewed. And actually, the people that join the Foreign Service, the average age is 35. So it's not like everybody comes right out of college and becomes a Foreign Service Officer.
How many people here would like to work in either political activism or in Washington, D.C. and/or? So probably a third of the room. I graduated from a small state school in New Hampshire. I went down to D.C. to intern at the Heritage Foundation. That's the world's largest think tank, to research what's going to be a pretty boring internship, actually. And then, everyone here know about the bank bailouts that happened 10 years ago? Then Congress had to bail out the banks, and my job became to research the bailouts for the Heritage Foundation. So that my research was used by higher-ups there, and they actually published a very influential paper on the bailouts shortly before the 2 votes that happened. I came to DC to try to change the system. How many of you here want to change the world? Right? We all want to change the world. I came to DC to do that, and I ended up working on Capitol Hill for a congressman. I ended up briefly working for a campaign and working again for Heritage on a contract. Interned for talk radio host Laura Ingraham. Worked briefly for her as well. Followed on good and ill a pretty typical DC path of sort of bouncing around jobs, averaging about 18 months at each job, which is really normal in DC, especially if you're trying to jump your career. My challenge was I never found a job that sort of balanced my need to actually make money, but also balanced my my values, because it's so in DC and anywhere in politics, I suppose, in political activism type work, people often you have to make prudential decisions. Do you work for this congressman? Well, I disagree with this congressman on A, B, and C issues. Can I still work for that person and still have my values supported while trying to push good things into law, etc.? So I ended up getting into political journalism because I realized there weren't that many congressmen and congresswomen I could work for ethically, and got into journalism, and then realized that as much as I enjoyed it, there was very little money in journalism, as I'm sure you're all aware, and I lived in one of the highest cost metro areas in the country. And so it meant that my savings were very little, and then I was getting married. So kind of like terrible names. tell you, Dale, influenced by my family needs, I decided to go from journalism, where I was doing part-time public relations work on the side, and go full-time with a trade association. And then this year, with a sort of like everyone know the show Shark Tank? So I went with a Shark Tank investor, who I call Dad, became my Shark Tank investor in my company. And we decided to launch a firm over the summer that takes my journalism skills, takes my political skills, and applies them to both political and non-political clients. So a little bit of a wavy path. The advantage here is that this is actually, from what I understand, going to be fairly normal, bouncing from job to job. And I think what Dale and I have shown is that you can have a career and still have other interests that can influence later careers. This isn't 2 generations ago, 3 generations, and 5 generations ago, where you have the same job for 50 years and then you retire and then you die. This is where we have much more opportunity now, where you can have multiple interests and not be just stuck in one path when you're 27, 35, or even 40.
So I think my family was never really involved in politics or anything of that nature. And so when I went through school at the University of Pittsburgh, I was a sandwich artist at Subway, as they used to call them, and also did room service at a hotel on campus, and things of that nature. So had kind of gone through that throughout college, and was fortunate enough through the university they provided an internship program. And so I think for any of you in any kind of career field you're looking at, I think an internship is a wonderful opportunity to, 1, get a sense of what you're looking to do, 2, to make connections with folks in that industry, and I think 3, for your resume building early on, very helpful. And so I had an internship in Pittsburgh City Council while I was attending the University of Pittsburgh, and really made a lot of wonderful connections there. I worked in a council office where the issues you were dealing with were, from local filling potholes and picking up garbage, all the way to, folks would call you about pressing national events that you had no control over, but you were that local connection to folks right on the ground. And from that, I built relationships with folks that connected me to different campaigns and things of that nature that led me all the way to working in the House of Representatives in Harrisburg. And I really just took to that, enjoyed the work in the General Assembly, and then transitioned into a lobbying career from the work in the General Assembly. But I think if you're interested in this type of work, there are a lot of folks at the local, state, federal level will provide internships, things of that nature, to get experience. Also working on campaigns. I think in the political process, you do learn a lot and get to meet a lot of folks, whether you're volunteering or working in some capacity in a role in a political campaign.
Thank you. So in your respective fields, all of you have mentioned different types of training or skills that you've had. What would some of the skills that undergraduate students could work on that would be useful later on, would you say?
Well, I just wanted to comment on what Mr. Vanga said. I mean, because, I just keep thinking about this, but that you just asked about skills that you can work on, but I was just thinking about your rise in your career, and if you look at what he's doing now, or has done, managed positions responsible for embassy operations, and you think, nothing would be more interesting in your life than to go to all these foreign countries in the world and to be responsible for the physicality of embassies and operating them. How could you start at a grocery store and get there? And then you think, what types of skills do you want to learn as an undergraduate? What could be better than learning how to shelve items in a grocery store and what the pricing is and what the relationship between the employees are and what the relationship between employees of management are, and to spend the time in your life as a high school kid, and then to realize that you want to come up through the ranks and to learn a skill at whatever you're doing. It could be a food store employee, or it could be working in the yards or maintenance, but to manage those skills, and then at some point in your life change your career, which I think now more and more people are doing. When we grew up, people stayed in their same careers, and I don't think I was really fair when I answered the question of what was my career track, because as I heard my colleague to the left talk about his, I was thinking how many different jobs like that I had in my life that contributed, number one, to my interest in law, and particularly college, because a lot of people didn't even go to college. I don't even know what the education is of the people here, but to enjoy what you're doing, to understand what you're doing, to do it faithfully and well, to be aware of the money aspects of what you're doing. And then with me, it was law. It just happened to be law. I don't know how good I would have been in a grocery store, but I would trade anything to have had his opportunities to go international, because to me in public service, and that's one of the things this is about, public service and politics, Washington, D.C. is a fabulous place to work, working in homes, a fabulous place to work, working around the world. I mean, to me, working around the world is the epicenter of where public service in America is, because of the worldwide scope of everything that goes on. So I didn't mean to digress, but I want to just go real quickly back to college education, because you asked about that, because I think as you're planning your major, you're planning your job, that there's no magic path to get to where you're going, that you need to embrace it, and you need to do it well, and you need to have the respect for others, and have others have respect for you. And at the end of the day, you will get a diploma in something, but you will have to make choices. And those choices really are going to be, are you satisfied with what you're doing? It could be either shelving food or counseling people in a social work experience, or working in a laboratory, or do you want advancement so that you can see more and do more? So it's pretty exciting for me in my job to hear what these other gentlemen are doing in theirs, because each one of us have had different career paths in what we've done, and all of us seem like we're relatively happy, and while we might want more money, or we want less responsibility, or something else, I think that this program today is a wonderful opportunity sort of to look inwardly and retrospectively at where you want to go with the courses that you pick and why you want to pick them. And I guess the bottom line would be, pick the courses that you're interested in, pick the courses you have passion in, and hopefully you will like your job and realize that it's not just the manual nature of what you're doing, but there's a lot more important interest and goal in the opportunities that present themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you, Judge, for your comments. I appreciate that. And, to reinforce what he is saying, I mean, there is such value in work, no matter what the job is. I mean, I learned as much working at Giant Eagle, stocking shelves, as you say, or as a store manager, to prepare myself for a career in the foreign service, and not to disparage education, but that I probably ever did in my classes at Pitt or Duquesne. I mean, just working in itself, learning how to show up on time and present yourself properly, and be accountable, customer service, those kind of things are hugely important to your success in whatever career path you choose. But your question, as I understood it, was what, one?
Types of skills.
Types of skills. You got to be able to, and this is going to sound a little cliche, but you got to be able to work with other people, no matter what field you're in what you do. And some people have that talent, and some people don't. I particularly don't. So I have to work at it. I have to, when I'm in a team or group setting, I find myself conscious of how can this be constructive for everybody. And I put myself in situations, where I need to develop that skill. And, I practice at it. But getting along with folks and performing as a team in a constructive way is hugely important. Unless you're, Vincent van Gogh or Rembrandt, where you just take pictures and sell them on your own. Everybody works with somebody else, and depends on them to advance their own careers and their own interests and goals. So, to answer your question, I think being able to interact with other people constructively is hugely important, and it's something that we look for in the State Department, in our testing and in all of our assessments before we hire you.
So I'm going to take more of a scattershot approach. They were very focused on a couple of really important aspects. But if you're going to get into political journalism, activism, those sorts of things, you have to know how to write, you have to know how to communicate, but you also have to know how to have thick skin. And I don't know the RMU Political Science Department. I don't know how you all discuss or debate issues in the classroom, but if you're going to go to DC, you're going to work out next to people who disagree with you on abortion, gender issues, the budget, foreign policy, everything. If you can't get along with those people, at the very least respect their intellectual integrity and that they're sincere, as sincere as you are, they're not bad people, you will struggle if you're going to go into those worlds. It's also true in journalism. I worked for a pro-life news outlet. When I covered Capitol Hill events, I didn't come up to somebody and say, to a congressman and say, why do you support baby killing? Well, that would have been really non-constructive in a whole lot of ways. I probably would have lost my job at my pro-life outlet. I went up and said, this is what you said, Congressman. I'd like to clarify your question here. When I worked on Capitol Hill, there were people we strongly disagreed with. We still spotted each other for bench press. It didn't affect how we treated ourselves, whether we were roommates, friends, acquaintances, playing frisbee together. You got to have thick skin. You've got to know your own position on something. You've also got to know your opponent's position. Because if you don't know theirs, you cannot effectively argue it. And you may actually learn your own position better. The other thing is make sure you have a strategy. You know, my dad ran a roofing company when I was a kid, so I was lugging shingles in the summers and winters. And I went into the military. The military wasn't the best environment for me. I learned I don't take orders very well, which is not great for the military environment. But they all taught me different things, such as long-term planning. When you have a goal, when you have a tactic, let's say, take a class or get a job, how does that fit into your 1, 3, 5, 10, 20-year goals? Because, again, we've seen, I think all of us have taken different skill sets when we first got our first, second, third jobs, and they've translated into the international field, working from home in public relations, which is very different than journalism or political activism. Going from answering phones for the local city council to being a widely respected lobbyist. So understanding how your skills apply in a broad way, and then having the discipline, the long-term discipline to be able to apply a strategy that you've developed with your peers, with your colleagues, with your bosses, professors, those you trust, to help you develop that strategy, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I'd like to echo a lot of what the panel has already stated. I think the ability to work together, as they describe the teamwork aspect of things, it's not always seen until you get into the workforce. You'll have a lot of opportunities here in the university setting to do things, and I think to take advantage of that. Relationship building. There's a lot of folks that I went to college with who I still rely on, who we still help to advance each other's careers and things of that nature. You'll have some key lifelong relationships that you build that way. I think that the other point that most of the panelists here hit on was kind of the basis of hard work. I think a lot of the things that we do or to be successful coming up from the bottom of working, whether it's at the grocery store, at the sandwich shop, lugging shingles, whatever that is. I think that the understanding of what it takes in order to get to that next step, to reach your goal and to fulfill it, a lot of that just comes from the perseverance and the hard work that it takes to do that.
I do want to add one other thing real quick. Show initiative. So, for example, lugging shingles. How many people here have lugged shingles? Okay, it's real. Okay, so you know how hard it is, right? I was trying to show off to my dad to get that extra raise. So I was carrying 2 bundles, 180 pounds, more than I weighed up a ladder. Probably wasn't the most beneficial thing long term because of my hips and knees. But in the course of doing that, my job was to lug the shingles, but also make sure that the shingles were lined up a certain way, that the nails were on a certain way. Go to the ground, dump the trash that came from the roof into the dumps. There was a lot of really basic tasks, but I had to show initiative in how I set up my time, how efficient I was. I had to observe the people on the roof and say, okay, this is where their timing's at. Because I've been paying attention, I know I have 3 minutes to get these 4 tasks done before they need me again. So even inside anything you're doing, make sure that you're showing initiative for your self-education. Because as we found in this whole panel, anything can be beneficial to a long-term career, and if you make it work for yourself.
Thank you. I wanted to take this time to ask if any students had any questions that they'd like to address for the whole panel.
Yeah, I guess this would be more specifically for you who traveled a lot overseas. Can you maybe pick a certain place and speak to some of the experiences you've had there, maybe they're good or bad, or things you should take into consideration when you're traveling overseas?
Well, yeah, that's a pretty broad question. It depends on where you're going and you know, why, I suppose. But the State Department actually has a site where you register when you go overseas. If you're going to Albania or Kuwait or wherever, you should go on there and let us know that you're going, so that, and when you're going to leave, so that we can keep track of you in case there's an emergency, which there are often in countries, you know, political upheavals, and we need to direct, you know, the American citizens to evacuate or shelter in place or to do whatever.
Lost passports.
Lost passports.
Can I have the number?
Yeah.
I need England and
Yeah, here's-
Croatia right now.
Here's the number.
So don't talk to him about your travel plans, talk to him.
Yeah, but you do have to be aware. I mean, you do have to be careful when you go. I mean, when I travel, I don't identify myself as an American, you know, except in it that I have to show a passport at a desk or something, and if I'm talking to somebody or if I'm, you know, sitting in a lounge or whatever. And that applies whether you're at a place in Europe or whether you're in, you know, the Middle East somewhere. But no, I mean, I could talk to you about particular experiences. Does that answer your question, or did you want me to talk some?
Yeah, one of the places specifically I was thinking about is Kuwait, because I know, you know, there's a lot harder to deal with people who live in that area because the language barrier is so, you know, they're so huge, you know what I mean? So maybe whenever you're there, you're trying to deal in local settings, like how do you do that safely and also like effectively?
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been assigned to France, Switzerland, Pakistan, Kuwait, Iraq, and one other one I think. But you know which one I hated the most? Was Switzerland. I mean, believe it or not, a beautiful, beautiful country, nice scenery, but a medium Domino's pizza was $50. You know, and that, you know, the Swiss were not pro-American at all. So you'd be surprised. And Albania was a beautiful country and very pro-American. But I'll tell you a real quick story if I have time. Do I have time
Yeah,
for a 5-minute story? To talk about your life in the Foreign Service and what you're often asked to do. I was the management officer at our consulate in Lahore. Consulate's not the embassy in Pakistan. The embassy is in Islamabad, and there's consulates in Karachi, Peshawar, and Lahore. But I was the management officer in the consulate in Lahore, and you have to be really students of history, I guess, or maybe not. You should know this. Everybody remember the Arab uprising and the riots that occurred in the Middle East? You do? Yes? What was the cause of that, allegedly? The alleged cause was this anti-Muhammad video that was posted on YouTube that caused a lot of riots and resulted in the death of 4 of my colleagues in Benghazi. But the real reason wasn't the video. But anyway, as a management officer in Lahore, I was one of about 15 Americans surrounded by 14 million Pakistanis, and they were rioting to try and get into our consulate to do mayhem, or hurts, whatever. A couple weeks prior to that, being a good management officer and trying to be a good neighbor to the people in Lahore, I wanted to beautify our grounds outside the consulate to make it look nice for the Pakistanis. So what do you do when you can't grow grass in an arid climate? What do you use instead? Turf. If I were a smart person, I would have used turf. Stones. Yeah, you get those ornamental stones. So I had ordered like 2 truckloads of those stones and had them dumped outside the consulate. And we actually had surrounded the consulate with storage containers, too high. And it's not, you don't go to the Home Depot in Lahore and rent storage containers. I mean, it was kind of hard to find them. So we surrounded, and what do you think happened to those stones?
They got thrown out.
Yeah, so the rioters ended up using the stones and pummeling us with them. It was cheap way for me to get the stones inside the embassy compound. But I mean, that's just an example of when you're overseas, kind of things that you may face that you never would have thought you would have faced.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt to them. I'm the stupid little HR director at Giant Eagle. I didn't expect to have to, you know, in my career someday, catching stones. But does that answer your?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
It's a story.
Thank you for sharing that story. Does anyone else have a question? No? I think that story brings up a good other follow-up question, though, of why public service was important to each one of you and why that motivates you for what you do. So, Judge Kaufman, would you like to start?
I think there's a Latin phrase called pro bono publico, and that's for the good of the community. I mean, again, I don't mean to go back to my colleague and working at a store, but when you work at a store and you work in retailing, you're really serving people. And so I think it takes, I think people that are in those careers need to like people. If you don't like people and being around people and understanding that the lessons are to respect and to be respected and to get along with people, then you know you may feel more comfortable being a writer or a poet or something in a solitary type of a career. But so I think the first purposeful aspect of doing something good for the community is that you know that you're doing something for somebody else and that you like doing something for somebody else. And then just carrying on with that idea, I think that you have to understand the goal and purpose of what you're doing. I mean, on one hand, you have a lot of rules and supervisors and people above you always to listen to. On the other hand, the people and the citizens that you work for are often the masters of the goal of public service that you try to achieve. And so it's that dichotomy that you go through life receiving a lot of satisfaction for or frustration. So public service, I always say, has its own reward, but it's not for everybody. It's a terribly rewarding career. And you feel sometimes at the end of the day a little bit better because you may have helped someone besides yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know that I could say it any better than that. I mean, in my case, it was because the State Department was a vehicle for me to contribute to the security and safety of the American public, whether it's at home or abroad, that I felt I could fit into. And you're right, you do get that positive feeling of accomplishment in that kind of a career. We could find that anywhere. I mean, I certainly did at Giant Eagle. I made, you know, lots of money, but did good things with people, I think. But not quite to the scale that, you know, I do now.
I decided to go into politics because I figured I'm pretty stubborn, I have a lot of energy, and I am sort of a busybody / helpful person, depending upon the day. And I figured politics corrupts a lot of people's souls. I figured since I'm stubborn, I'd be able to resist the corruption. So that's really why I went into politics. What I didn't realize, and this goes back to the strategic point I mentioned earlier, was how relatively little money there is in journalism, activism, and being, you know, working on public policy for a member of Congress. But I also didn't realize, they talked about, you know, these two gentlemen talked about feeling like it made a difference. Working from home as a radical extrovert, until I defined the word extrovert, was really difficult. A, because I didn't have a lot of people around me to talk to. B, as a journalist, you know, I'm writing 12 to 15 articles a day. They're going on a website. I hope people read them. Whereas if you're working at a grocery store, if you're a judge, every day you see the people that you're working with, and you can see the impact. You're working on public policy. You know, what do we have here? You know, key role in passage of laws that have changed the face of Pennsylvania. Well, I wrote a lot of articles, and I hope people read them and got a little bit of impact from them. So those are just two things I would say be cautious about if you do want to go into the activism world or journalism or public policy, is to make sure that you walk in with reasonable expectations, so that way you don't burn out like I did. Because I came in with really high expectations about changing the world and public service and what that would mean, and a few years later I wasn't able to necessarily look at what I had intended as a goal and just be able to see it accomplished. And so, a little bit off track, but just to wrap it back around, I wanted to use my natural talents well. And I wish in college that I had known how to have a better understanding of the long-term goals and the strategy to get there.
Yeah. I think for me, a lot of it, I was always interested in the the arena of politics, the public policy debates. When it came down to, I guess when I was growing up or in college, politics wasn't as, I guess, high profile as it is today. It wasn't the kind of 24/7 coverage, and we didn't have Twitter or any of the other activity there. And so, but I was always drawn to the, an issue that comes up, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be passionate voice on one side, passionate voice on the other side, and any of those major issues, trying to bring that together to accomplish something to move forward for the country. I think everybody had different roles here, as they've described, whether it's the journalists covering the debate, impacting it that way, folks keeping us safe overseas, we have folks upholding the law in the courts, and so there's a lot of different avenues depending on what your interest is and how you want to move that forward.
Thank you. So, Mr. Stiggins, you brought up an interesting thing whenever you said that there were certain things you wish you had known
Sure.
when you were an undergrad.
Yep.
So I was wondering if each of you could elaborate on something you might have wished you'd known prior when you were our age to help you. Mr. Kaufman?
I never imagined that I would be a judge, and I wound up as a career path being a judge. But I couldn't have imagined how lonely the life of a judge is. It's an unusual career. I mean, raise your hands type of thing if you ever even saw a judge. I mean, there'd be a lot less that even were judges. It's a strange career, and I've been there a long time, like 30 years. So I never dreamt in going through that my life would be so isolating. I really, truly would be happier in a grocery store. I might like an embassy, but I love grocery stores.
More food.
Yeah, right.
So, that's a problem. When they give these psychological tests and they say you're in the wrong career, it's too late when you look back and realize that being an extrovert is not the place to be a judge. So that's, going through school, I think it's just important, but that's the way life, deals its cards. I mean, sometimes you wind up in positions you can't even imagine. You got a baby now. I mean, before you've had a baby, you can't even imagine what it was like, to have a baby.
He's right.
Then your whole life starts to change. So that's that.
Yeah, I guess I would say two things real quick. One is do a lot of research as to what your potential opportunities might be. Because when I got out of high school, I mean, we had Mrs. Gill, who had been career counselor for 40 years and really wasn't into the job, in my high school. So I really had no clue coming out of school, which is probably why I ended up staying at China, what other careers are out there or I could have pursued. And I think the timing for you all is great. I mean, if you were coming out of college or 10 years ago, the job market was a lot tighter. I think you're in a good position right now. So do that research and find out what opportunities are there. Number two, real quick, don't apply to every job the same. Find out what the hiring manager is looking for and tailor all your written materials and prepare for interviews specifically for the criteria that they're screening for. People often make the mistake of just sending the same stuff to every application that you send out. Don't do that. Do the research to find out what it is that they're screening for.
I think we have ESP going on here because one of the things I want to say is really important, I wish I'd known better, was how to network. Does everyone here know what an informational interview is? Good, because I've spoken to several classes who nobody knows what one is. It's really important to know people in your field because if your professors enjoy speaking with you, they'll refer you to other people. And therefore you can have a network of people who can help you, but also you can help them, as was mentioned earlier. I wish I had known more about the importance of informational interviews and networking, but also make sure that you are, I'm not naturally a very tactful person or sensitive to people's needs always. I try to be helpful, but sometimes I just kind of do it my own battering ram approach. And one of the things that I really had learned through trial and error was, I'm trying to do something good, or I'm trying to approach, let's say, the president of my campus, right, when I was a student. She and I knew each other moderately well because I'm activism on campus, a student senator, things like this. But I didn't realize till late in my senior year, the person I needed to speak to get meetings with her was really her administrative assistant, her executive secretary, or executive assistant, because that's the person who says, do I want to let this loud but well-intentioned student on the schedule, yes or no? So subtleties like that, being aware of what people want in order to make sure that your message is more effective. Again, I've probably been the most verbose person up here. Sometimes fewer words are better if you think ahead and you can strategize how you're going to do that. So those are the two things I would leave you with.
Yeah, I think that just to piggyback on that, the networking component very important. I think also utilizing the tools that the university has here for you. I think spending time talking to your professors, talking to the heads of your department, other folks in career placement, the resources you have to, as we described, tailor your resume, your materials. While you're here, take advantage of all that. And then the other is just the initiative piece here of getting out there, starting to understand in a lot of ways what you don't want to do. I think, we talk a lot about what you do want to do. A lot of that is you get into something and you're immediately, maybe the roofing job wasn't for you, right? And so you have to try it, you figure it out, and then you realize, okay, I want to go a different direction. So a lot of that is just getting out there and doing it, but I think as you're here, the university has some wonderful resources just to make sure you're tapping into that and understanding what's available to you.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one more student question, if anyone would have a question. If not, then I believe...
Don't be scared, come on. You gotta have a question. 30 people in the room.
Anyone?
I already asked one.
That's
If
the
you
second
have a
one.
second one, go
Who else
ahead.
is asking? You have a second one?
All right, then I believe that will be it. If you have a more personal question, I think the panelists would be comfortable answering. So thank you. No, you didn't.